Already recording too, right? Okay.
Yep.
So, Mr. Kim, I'm ready to go if you are on your other device or your other means of broadcasting. We are missing Miss Coelho, but I do know that she is expected to join. Oh, there she is. She's
Somehow I
pretending to be
changed
Dylan.
it changed under my son's name.
That's all right. Okay, so Kim, are you good?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Beverly School Committee's standing subcommittee meeting on finance and facilities. Today is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, and we are meeting not even hybrid, we're totally remote this evening using a meeting application allowing for remote participation. And this type of meeting has no public access, so there are no public access portions of our meeting. We are being broadcast and streamed by BevCam. Thank you, BevCam. And with system upgrades, our closed captioning is now available immediately on the BevCam broadcast and will be applied to the recorded version of the YouTube channel within 24 hours. On June 16th, 2021, the governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. And on February 12th, and again on July 16th of 2022, he extended the provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. This specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. We would encourage viewers to utilize the BevCam streaming options this evening if possible. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation, although through that permission, the chair and the quorum will be physically present when this act and its extension expires. So as I said, tonight's FNF, and joining us, because we're all on Zoom, we can all see who else is on our Zoom. We have various members of the school committee. We have some members of district administration. We have our citizen representatives. We appreciate your volunteerism. And because some of us are remote, and not all of us are actually remote this evening, every vote has to be by roll call. So I'm going to do a quick roll call attendance so that it's in the records. On the school committee, we have Dr. Kanan McKenzie DeFranza.
Here.
Thank you. We have Miss Kim Coelho.
Here.
Thank you. Our citizen reps, Miss DeGeneva.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Manzo.
Here.
Okay, serving as our technical guru this evening and also on the school committee is Miss Rachel A. Bell.
I'm here, but only for technical support.
And I very much appreciate that. I want to thank you in advance. At the district administration level, we have our Director of Transportation, Dana Cruchet.
Here.
We have Director of Food Services, Christina Leal.
Here.
I apologize, Miss Mary, I do not know your title.
Assistant Director of Transportation.
Oh, that's why. Okay, my bad.
I'm going to be introducing her.
How about is Liz Liz is our recording secretary, correct?
Here.
Fantastic, thank you. And then the queen of our show, the head of finance at our school district, Miss Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Okay, and then of course we have BevCam. Okay, so I'm going to remove the share script off my screen, and I'm going to share my screen so that we can follow our agenda. And I will be the Vanna for Miss Jean Sherburne this evening. Share. Let's go. Let's see. How are we, everybody? Can everybody see the agenda right now?
Yes.
Okay, and for those of you watching along at home, and maybe this is mostly for Kim, if you think you need the font to be bigger, please let me know and I'll do my best to increase the font on a given file that's being shown. Okay, So our first item for the agenda this evening is approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting, which took place November 16th, 2022. I'm going to jump over to those meeting minutes for, oh gee, a minute, no pun intended. And you guys all should have had these in your packet. I'm just going to show them for people watching at home. We have our meeting minutes here. Does anybody, well, first thing I'm looking for a motion to approve these meeting minutes. I need somebody on the committee.
I'll make that move.
I'll second.
All right, I missed whoever that was. I think it was Dr. Kanan and Kim respectively, or
Yes.
vice versa.
Vice versa.
Okay, all right, Liz, hopefully you got that. And now that we have that motion on the floor, does anybody have any comments or corrections on our meeting minutes? Hearing none, we'll do our roll call vote. Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Ms. Genova,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So that is 5-0. Okay, our next item, I'm going to close that tab. Our next item on our agenda is budget transfers, and I don't believe we have any. Is that correct, Ms. Sherburne?
Correct.
No budget transfers, well, fantastic, I guess. And our next item is gifts to schools. So I'll open that file, and I do know that that is size puny font. So hold on a second. So here's our gifts to schools for November and December of 2022. I'm gonna make it a little bigger. All our gifts are down at the end of the alphabet. All right, and you guys know my motto, who would ever say no to a gift to our schools? But I'm looking for an official motion to approve these, to accept our gifts to schools.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McKenzie. Jean, do you want to speak to these at all, or do you want to just field questions?
Yeah, so most of them are from the portrait commissions and or the yearbook commissions, and they did receive from the class of 1957 a donation to Guidance for Guidance Awards. Instead of setting up a scholarships, it would be a scholarship award, but a one-time. So looking for approval of $8,040.54.
So that motion has been made and seconded. Does anybody have any questions about these, or are we ready to vote? Okay, we'll try to, I'm going to try to go in the same order. My Zoom window keeps moving though. So Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Ms. DeGenova.
Yes.
I'm going to get better at saying your name maybe if I practice enough. I apologize. And
Hey,
myself,
Genova,
yes.
that's okay.
All right, awesome. So that passes 5-0, Liz. I'm going to take that off our screen. And next is our building and grounds report. So again, I'm going to put that on the screen for everybody watching from home. So we have a B&G report. It was in your packet. I'm looking, I actually probably need to put all of your names up on my screen. I'm looking to see if anybody either on the video or on the invite list is using their hand. If anybody has any questions on the B&G report,
I do.
please go ahead.
Under Centerville, HVAC controller. Okay. And then all of a sudden it replaced this for our for Beverly, the middle school system. Am I missing something? Or since it's under Centerville and then I see Beverly Middle School, I guess I'm a little confused.
I'm going to think that he forgot to, is Centerville listed above?
Yes. If you
So,
go above on the top.
oh no, yeah. So, okay, so I'm not sure. I would have to check with Mr. Shirley on that, but it does talk about BMS, so yep, so that's a good question. But I can ask him on it. I'm thinking it should be under Centerville, and I'm thinking that he probably copied from a previous month that we had a problem and forgot to change BMS. So I'm going to assume it's Centerville, but I can double check and get back to the committee.
Mr. Manzo,
I think it's an acronym for Building Management System.
Oh,
You're right.
okay.
Thanks.
Question answered.
Danzo.
No problem.
that's a lot of years of experience right there. That's awesome. All right. So in general, this report is for our information, and then if we have any questions about it, we ask the questions, and there's nothing to vote on here. So I'm dismissing that. And now, Ms. Sherburne, I am ready. I'm prepared to try to be your Ravenna.
Okay. So
I'm
I'm
just going to
thinking,
hand over to you.
I think what I should do is, if you open up the document that I sent to you, that will be a live document versus what I've sent to on the PDF. Or do the PDF, and then when I get to the school building part, switch to where you are now. So go to that one, yes. And then when we get to building into the budgeting 101, I want to be over there because the links will be live.
I understand.
So that's why I did. So for the committee, I'll explain that. So today we're going to have an update for the food service update. We have Ms. Christina Leal online. And then we'll have transportation update, Dana Krushank and his assistant, Mary is online. And then I'll be doing the budgeting 101, and then we'll get to our financial reports. So I'll have Christina speak of her slides.
Hi, good evening. So over Christmas winter break, we actually got to redo McEwen Cafe to Under the Sea Cafe, similar to at Centerville, but this is a total under the sea theme. We have our new mascots, Miko and Win, who are the dolphins, I think, on the next slide. Oh, maybe not. So the reasons for the makeover, Centerville was a huge success. The kids loved it. It created such a fun, relaxing environment for the students. So over the summer, we wanted to incorporate all the schools or try and get them done. So we did issue a formal IFP or IFP for all 5 schools to get done. And McEwen was next on our list. So that's why it was done over the winter break. And then if you go down, there's Miko and Wen. So there are the 2 dolphins. These are the new mascots for McEwen School. And then they're just all over the cafeteria, different under the seas, different characters. And then we do have a Schubert wall because the kids at McEwen loved going over to check out Schubert in the pond. And so we made sure that we added a little wall just for him. And then, so they are actually coming back to finish. We extended McEwen into the lobby. So they are coming back in February to finish hanging up the informational board, which will be in the lobby. They're going to have a welcome to McEwen preschool, as well as hangers over the serving line in the cafeteria. And then we are starting our first call tomorrow to discuss the makeover over at Hannah Elementary. Wow. And that's what we did over our winter break.
All right, that looks fantastic. I had heard that it was last night was the Centerville PTO meeting, and one of the Centerville parents said they had a student over at McEwen, and I should get over there and see it, that it was awesome. And so just like this slide here, it does look incredible. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Leal? I am looking for hands and my little videos. I'm going to ask you guys this evening, really, if I don't call on you, will you please just unmute and say that you want to speak? Okay, Ms. Leal, I don't see any hands for you. I think you're off the hook.
Thank you,
Unintended.
Christina.
Get the fish theme, you're off the hook. Okay.
Thank you.
So the next we have is a transportation update, and I can talk about, and if there's any questions, we can have Dana chime in. So first of all, it's our pleasure to introduce Mary Canavan, our new Assistant Director of Transportation. Mary has 27 years in the industry, most recently coming from the Cambridge Public Schools. Mary is a licensed CDL school bus driver for 25 years and a school bus instructor for 12 years. And Mary joined us on January 3rd. So if Mary wants to pop up and say hello so we can see her, she's helping Dana and going out to all the schools to learn about Beverly.
Mary, you're still on mute. I saw you come off of mute for half a second, but there you go. I still cannot hear you, even though your
Oh,
camera
there
says
she
you're
is.
not on mute.
Oh. Okay, so we can't hear you, Mary. But we can see you.
And I noticed that I'll take this opportunity while Mary is maybe trying to figure out her technical difficulties to say that Miss Erin Brown is now on our call. I just saw Miss Erin Brown while I was flicking through.
Hi, everybody.
But maybe
Erin.
future. Yes, you are. Oh, fantastic. Thanks for joining us. All right, Mary, do you want to try again, or are we gonna just move along? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We'll maybe get to meet you in person. Again, apologies. We really decided to err on the side of caution this evening and have our meeting be totally remote. We do have some people who commute a good distance, and the weather forecast earlier today was such that we wanted those people to be able to be home and not risk traveling in inclement weather. So maybe another meeting we'll have you in person.
So the next thing we have under the transportation update is that we had an RFP 22-048 for cameras for the buses went out to bid, and it has been awarded to IVS, which doing business as Angel Tracks. We'll be installing cameras on 44 vehicles. 22 of them are large buses, 13 are small buses, and 9 vans. They'll have both the interior and exterior views of the buses. So that's really important. And the contract is currently being circulated through our administration in City Hall and will be finalized soon. Once that's finalized, then they'll set up a time period with Dana on when they can come and install it. Obviously, we need to work around school days. So I'm hoping that it's going to be done in February vacation, but it might be that it has to be a little bit longer or weekends. We have been reviewing the routes to see if there's any additional seats for riders who are waitlisted. We're currently, we did receive notice that we could open up one route for an additional rider. And then Dana will reach out to those if we have any additional. So it's one of those things that we continuously do, but we did want to inform the committee that we have been able to open up some. And currently we have a wait list of 18 riders. And then the last thing is that we're looking at our fleet and we're currently reviewing the existing fleet. And Dana and I are trying to figure out the end of life estimates for all of the buses. So in the New England, we can usually it's the rust that takes the bus out, not the mechanics. So we're actually looking at that for the FY24 process to make sure that we're coming forth with what we think we need. And then we'll also be working with the city administration as far as if we can electrify any more of our vehicles. I don't know if Dana has anything else he wants to add. But that's pretty much what we discussed when we were preparing for the meeting.
No, that pretty much covers it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Okay.
So
does
Dana and
anybody-
Mary, you may log off now. You do not need to stay for my budgeting 101. But because I know you guys get up a lot earlier than me.
All right, and I will say to the committee, does anybody have any questions about the transportation update before we move on to the next item? Looking through to see if any of you have your hands raised. All right, I see none. All right, so really, Mary, run away now, really, while you can.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night. And actually, I should have said at the beginning of this meeting, our superintendent of schools is at a conference this evening and tomorrow. And so, Ms. Brown, I thank you for coming. I think that you're here, at least in part, sitting in for Dr. Chirocek, who's normally with us on this meeting. And we usually have one city councilor here, but there's a city council subcommittee meeting this evening around, I believe, proposed zoning changes, and that's a hot topic in the city of Beverly. So we have no city councilors with us this evening. However, Ms. Flowers and Mr. Rotundo tell me that they'll be happy to catch up. It would hurt me if I had to go eat lunch at Salerno's to give Mr. Rotundo an update of what he missed this evening. Miss Jean, where would you like me to go next? The lot
So I think
document?
if you can open up that other document that says school budgeting 101.
Yes, ma'am.
So we think. So we have, we've created this school budgeting 101 document, and Lorinda and I were talking about it, that it has an awful lot of information that people may want to ponder through. And if anybody has any questions, there's going to be an awful lot of links that they can look at after the fact. So the first thing with school budgeting 101 is, what is the city's education obligation? So all school-age children who live in Massachusetts are entitled to attend a public school free of charge for all children ages 6 to 16 that must attend. So it is the parent guardian's obligation to make sure that the children attend school, but they have different variations they can choose from. Next slide. So the parent guardian choices could be attend home school district, which would be would be their home school in Beverly Public Schools. I didn't expand onto this, but there is also open enrollment that's within your district. But what I was trying to target here is what the parent guardian choice is. The other choice they have is they can attend public school outside of their home district, which would be called the Inter-District School Choice Program. And as you know, school committee members vote each year on how many seats that we would have available in our district. Each school committee would be doing that. There are some school districts that don't accept school choice programs, but that would be it. And if we clicked onto that link that says school choice, that would bring you out to the DESE's website that would show you the school choice program. And then if we scroll where we are here on the 2023, just about where it says inter-district school choice tuition, if you click onto that one and go into there, you have to go into the enrollment data that's on the first line. And then it will come up and will tell you, and you scroll down to Beverly, which is always just out of the line of the first page. And Beverly is here. So we have 134 students that we're receiving, and we have 70 students that we are actually going out of our district. So this is where the number comes in that tells me how much we're going to be anticipating for receiving. And as you know, during our budget discussions, that we have a revolving account that is called school choice revolving. And so this year we're anticipating $726,041. And then the offset is the sending is the cost that the city has to pay. out for the students that go out of district. This year, there is a credit that Lorinda's circling right now, and that is a credit under the sending that I do believe that there was a child that was out of district placed and they gave the credit. So the city's cost this year was going to be $597, $657, but with the credit, they'll be paying $560, $830. So this is just a document, and you can go into this site and you can see each one. During our budget presentations, you'll see that at one time Beverly had more students going out than coming in, and we actually have changed that. So I'll go back to my screen. And then, so that's the school choice. There's charter schools, which that's another area that students can, go out to a charter school and the district gets charged. A slide beyond this is going to tell you how those get funded. Our choice for vocational technical programs would be the North Shore Educational Technical School. And I have a link there that you could get out to their website if you wanted to learn more about that. And that is set, that money is set through the cherry sheet. That comes in based on what the needs are, and we get an assessment from North Shore, Essex North Shore Agricultural. The next thing would be virtual schools, Commonwealth virtual schools. So there's two of them. There's the Tech Connections Academy, and then there's the Greater Commonwealth Virtual School, which was formerly known as the Greenfield Virtual School. And one thing that I didn't know about is myself is that Massachusetts Academy for Math and Science at WPI, and what I read about that, if we click onto that link, would tell you that I believe it was juniors at the junior level, students can go into Worcester Polytech. So I'm not really sure if we've ever had any students there, but that's what I found there, that it tells us here that they have 100 students that are academically accelerated in grades 11 and 12 from Massachusetts. If a parent chooses that program, it's free of charge. However, they would be the ones responsible to get the child to school every day. And that is the same situation if school choice, if they choose another community or they come to us from another community, they have to do it. So this was one of the things that I actually learned on when I was doing my school budgeting 101 myself. Didn't realize that that was an option. And then, of course, there's private education where they could choose to go to a private school or a parochial school. And then the last is the homeschooling. And that little link down at the bottom there would be where I got this information from on what choices the families can choose from. Yeah. So the next thing I'm talking about here is the education funding sources for those. So attending a homeschool district, the funding comes from the tax levy, Chapter 70, and the local receipts. The attending public schools outside of our district would be coming from the cherry sheet offsets. Excuse me. So therefore, if we have a student that chooses to go to another district, that would be where the city would get charged it's called an assessment off on the cherry sheet. And charter schools, same thing. Vocational technical education program, that is again the same funding that we receive for our appropriated budget, the tax levy, Chapter 70, and local receipts. And then the Commonwealth virtual schools is a cherry sheet offset. And that's one thing is, if you recall, when we talk about school choice, it used to be around $5,000 to attend a Commonwealth virtual school. The district, the sending district is charged around $7,000. And then the Academy for WPI, I just learned about that, so I don't know what that cost is. I'm going to assume it's probably the same as the virtual, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Private education, the parents have to fund, and homeschooling, the parents have to fund. However, their curriculum does have to get approved by the school district. And our homeschool liaison is Julie Smith from our Centerville school principal. Excuse me. Budgeting 101, talking about financial impact. So the budget is to maximize the financial and human capital resources to positively impact every student in a financial, legal, and ethical responsible manner. We use the expertise of the educational leaders in developing a student-focused instructional environment supporting the school's district mission, which is that Beverly Public Schools seek to maximize academic achievement and personal growth to enable all students to compete within the global economy. And then there, of course, with everything, there is financial laws and practices. So understanding the basics of municipal finance law, learning the best practices in budget management, development and management, and understanding the basics of fund accounting, and understanding the relationship between and among school committee policies, municipal finance law, personnel laws, and district-based procedures. So when we go further into this, we're going to be touching base on just a few of those. The municipal finance law is the next one. So the next slide. So here's an awful lot of links that will develop a common understanding in the legal aspects of school finance. So the first one is going to be the Chapter 30B Uniform Procurement Laws. So when we purchase something, we have to follow Chapter 30B to make sure that we encumber it, open bidding, no collusion. So you might want to click that one open. I'm not sure how much we can get to there. But this is the law talking about the different things. And this is the Attorney General's office is the one that oversees this. And this just talks about definitions of the whole program, who the chief, Lorinda's highlighting chief procurement officer, and that there's a purchasing agent. So in the city, the mayor is our procurement officer. Our purchasing agent is David Gelano. And then you have department heads like myself and our buildings and grounds director that are MCPPO certified, which stands for Massachusetts procurement officers. So this just gives you a little detail. The deeper you get into this, I will tell you, when you have to bid, when you have to go out there. So a lot of times somebody will say to me, most recently was the Ayers Kindergarten Playground, that the PTO could go purchase something. And why did it cost more? Because we went out to bid. And it's because if you're purchasing anything, we have to follow the rules and guidelines that we have to pay prevailing wages. So if you had at your home hired a plumber or a contractor, you would just be able to pay whatever they charge. But being a public entity, we have to follow the rules and regulations where the cost can be a little bit more costly, but it's the rules and we have to follow them. The next thing is Chapter 39, talking about municipal government. Chapter 44 is the municipal finance for revolving funds. I'd like you to open up that one, Lorinda, because a lot of times people will ask me why, I gave you the law part, but somebody will ask me, why do I, just open up a revolving account? And there are specifics. So later on, I have a little chart that shows us why. So we can have a revolving account for tuition fees. We can have a revolving for transportation fees, summer school, but we can't just make up our own. There's got to be, it has to fall in certain criteria. And what this is saying here in the third paragraph, it says the revolving fund shall established pursuant to the section by law, it has to have its own fund, specify each fund, what the activities are going to be. And then if we were to create a new one, we would bring that to school committee for approval. And therefore, when anything goes into a particular fund, it can only be, the expenditures can only be associated with what that fund is. So that, and then they get rolling because it's a revolving, it revolves into the next fiscal year and it has to stay there. The next thing I have is, public records, Chapter 70 school funds, so state aid. So we know that that's where a lot of our funding comes from, is the Chapter 70 funding. And so there's a lot of information in there. So instead of, us going through all of them, this is where if somebody wants to learn more about why we do what we do, each of these will tell them. Then we have Chapter 71, support of schools, appropriations and recommendations. And then anything related to athletic programs or student activity is covered by Chapter 71, Section 47. And then 70B would be the school building assistance programs, which we just most recently used for building the new middle school. And then Erin Brown will be dealing with the labor relations and public employees in her position as the Director of Human Resources. And then conduct of public officials and employees. So that would include the school committee and all employees. That would be Chapter 268A. And the final one is Chapter 149, talking about independent contractor rules. So there's sometimes we have to figure out, is the person an employee or is the person an independent contractor? Obviously, if they're an employee, they would get a W-2. And if they're an independent contractor, they would get 1099. So a lot of times we more refer to as that's a 1099 person. Excuse me. So then, of course, with everything, with there's laws and regulations, there's got to be someone that's the financial regulator. So this is to develop a common understanding of who they are, what their purpose is, and how frequently you interact with them. So when I was trying to write this and trying to figure out who would the audience be, so it would be different. But the school committee, there's a school committee, and underneath that person is the superintendent, the director of finance and operations, and then the administrator of special education and PPS, which would be Ms. Blansky. On the city side would be the city accountant, finance director, and treasurer. If we were talking in regards to a town, that could be the town selectman and town manager. They would have different titles. And then we would have the mayor and the city council. And then the Department of Revenue is the one that's going to oversee funds that we receive in and what we do with them. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we all know who that is. And then the Department of Early Education and Care would be for the preschool. Department of Public Health, the Attorney General, the Inspector General, and independent auditors. So as you know, when I do my end of year report that goes to the DESE, it has to be audited by an independent auditor. And currently here in Beverly, we use Powers and Sullivan. So here we talk about funding sources. So the first one is the Chapter 70 legislation and regulations. And then also I talked about cherry sheets earlier. So if we click on the cherry sheet link, that will hopefully show us a cherry sheet. Oops, gotta close that. I think if you scroll down a little bit, it will tell us, I think keep going, I might have missed it. Growth factors. All right, so oh, here we go. Keep going. No, guess not. Go back up, sorry. So this was the page that we would go to find out what our estimates are. And then I'm just not sure, probably right there, the monthly aid distributions. And so a cherry sheet, I didn't know why they called it a cherry sheet myself. And then what I found out is at one time it was cherry pink color. So therefore that's where the cherry word came out of. So this kind of talks about at the Department of Local Services and, each different category that would be there. And right now, see how it says Abington, if you clicked on there, you'd be try to find Beverly to see what, and then select submit. Yep. And then it comes in here. So this talks about our chapter 70. So we went into the monthly one. When I was linking it, I thought I was coming up with the annual, but this tells you how much we're coming in each month. So far we've received, July through December. And interesting in this is if we had a change in something like our school choice receiving, I think we see on the month of December, it looks like it was a little bit higher, if my eyes are seeing correctly. That's a little bit changed. So do recall when we do our enrollments, we do it on October 1st, and then we do one, they do, I think, another one December, and I think in March. So that's when we notice things. So something happened in with I would say the October 1st enrollment, tweaked it a little bit. So when we received our payment in December, it was a little bit higher, and then it should stay the same. And if we looked at the other report that I would show us the annual, we'd see that that number changed. And when I show you my my revenue reports, you'd see that we'd put a little bit extra in. And I'm not sure if we captured that in this December, if we captured in the report this month, but definitely next month we would see that. And then we have the grants. We know we have federal, state, and local grants. And then the revolving funds. This is where I was hoping to see before. When we click on this link here for revolving funds, this comes from the Department of DLS. And this tells you, so you can see that we can have a revolving fund that talks about adult education, community schools, culinary arts. That's if we were to have a culinary arts department like, something like Essex Tech has. Non-resident student tuition, we utilize that one. We use that for our SEVIS funding that we receive. I'm sure Beverly had school bus advertising at one time. That kind of was a hot ticket, so that got put on the list. Here's our school choice tuition. And school extended services, if we were to run our own program in charge. School lunch, so that Christina has she is self-funded. That's where her funding would go. And then school rental and athletics, and then student activity. So this kind of tells you in here, what can it be used for, if it has to be accepted. So these are all the rules and regulations. So it's interesting where we see that it says school rental, and look at the fund balance closes out to the general fund. We do not utilize a school rental, but if you scroll down a little bit further, Lorinda, we do have a use of school property. And then if you click over to that fund balance, it gets carried over. So that's why we have that one. But if we were to have another kind of program that we were renting a school out and that they'd want the proceeds to go to the general fund, that would be that's really the only little difference. So we have a use of school property versus school rental. And then, of course, vocational education. So those are the only ones that we can utilize. We can't make up any additional ones. They have to fall into one of those categories. So we do have a tuition in that we use the SEVIS funding. And then recall, we have one for special education. They both have their own separate, but they would both qualify under those non-resident, because if we have students come from other districts to come to our special education, that's why we would fall into being able to have two accounts that say tuition. And then, as you can see, it carries over to the next fiscal year. So all of our revolving accounts do that. Then we have circuit breaker, which most of you will know what circuit breaker is. That's where we get funding in for our tuitions out students. Gifts in schools, donations, that's another area that you have to make sure that you follow the rules and regulations, which one of them is that the school committee needs to accept all gifts and donations. So therefore, that's why we bring that to the F&F finance and facilities meetings. And then we have student activities, and there's rules and regulations on that. And then the scholarships doesn't have a link. It's just telling you that you're a fiduciary agent for donors and trusts supporting students in post secondary learning. So those are our funding sources. The next thing I have is best practices for budget development. And this is Government Financial Officials Association slide that I've grabbed off their website, talking about budgeting best practices. So of course, we need to plan and prepare, set instructional priorities, pay for the priorities, implement a plan, and ensure stability, student achievement, and financial stability. And it was kind of funny when Dr. Schrochek and I were going over my slides, and it was like, yes, check, 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 check. Yes, we follow all those rules. And that is the best practice. This one here is kind of a real busy slide, but it does talk about all the things: academics, teachers, principals, what are the student learning goals, and how do we get there? What do we need? And over here, in the bottom right-hand corner is a link to the government officials financial offices page if somebody wanted to learn more about that. A lot of that really is more geared to the city's director of finance information, but it's got valuable information there. Next slide. And then steps to implementing: build understanding and beliefs, identify and overcome barriers, prioritize equity, challenge silos is inequity, set goals, plan strategically, and think non-linear. And then here is budget structure and reporting. So whatever we do, all the time, we have rules and regulations that we have to follow. And this talks about what those are. So the first one is the, Uniform Massachusetts Accounting System, that we have to, follow the rules and regulations there. DESE has a chart of accounts that we all have to have. If your chart of account, which ours does not, agrees with or is set up exactly like the DESE, you have to have what is called a crosswalk so that they know if I'm saying this, what that means in their area. So our chart of accounts has a crosswalk when we do our end of year report. And then the compliance supplement for Massachusetts school districts is, this is the outside auditors, and this was updated in December of 2022 as far as what they'd be looking at. And this is what the outside auditors pulls up, and this tells them, what are you going to ask Ms. Sherburne about, and to make sure that she has spent her money appropriately and within the guidelines. And as the school committee knows, we get a report at the end. And if there's any findings, there can be findings that are have a financial impact that we have never had. And then there are sometimes there's some findings it's just, language. And then there are sometimes that we have no findings, which I've been very happy to say that we've had a few of those during my time. The next thing is I talk about is municipal fund accounting. So a lot of times people will say, well, that person's a CPA and that person's this, or, somebody else handles finances in another area. And there's many different types of accounting. But what we deal with is fund accounting. So everything is fund-based versus, having a statement at the end of a balance sheet at the end of we don't have those. We have a fund accounting that we have to balance. So with that, there's a general fund, that's the taxes, the local aid, and that's where the city is in support of the schools. Grant funding, federal, state, private, and donate and gift and donations. So that's one thing as far as a grant is concerned. When we receive a grant, everybody may say, oh, that's a state, that we got that from DESE, so it must be state. But we really have to go back to what is it? Is it state or federally funded or private? So we've had all of those types. So most of our funding, that's Title I, Title II-A, most of our, I'm going to say 99% of our grants come in are federally funded. So that's federal funds that go through the state to us. And then there are some states. So academic enrichment is one of them that has come in that way. Sometimes we receive grants for the health, our nursing and health departments, and those come in from the Department of Public Health. I have to then check, is the funding coming from the federal to them, or is it actually their own funding? And then, of course, we have the private funding. So we do have South Signaling will give us grants. BevEd gives us grants. So those would be under the private gifts and donations. Revolving funds are fee-based programs, our student activity, and all the other revolving funds that I've talked about. And then capital funds, bond authorizations, and cash, that is really handled at the city side. But it is important to know that they do have to bond to build us new buildings. So therefore, that is one, an area that's happens. Next we have is trust funds, which is usually the scholarships, or if somebody leaves an endowment to the, the school district of any sort. So this talks about the Division of Local Services. It's as a resource. So the city finance director deals more in regards to the Department of Local Services, but a lot of times we have to get some questions from them as far as how we handle certain things. So I'm not, let's open up the top one, accounting guidance oversight for publication. And this here comes out with what they have. So look at all of these departmental manuals. I think I have that on another slide. But, what does a treasurer need to know? What does a collector need to know? And I always find in my job, I not only need to know what I need to do, but also what happens with the data when I give it, So if I'm coding something a certain way, or if we get a grant, what does the treasurers need to know? So a lot of times it, will fall in there. And so, in here is the revolving funds for school departments. We've already talked about that in that respect. So this is just another resource. And so this is the department that I most recently called in regards to the Chapter 40S funding on the schools with the new anchor point. So who handles that? So this is the resource person that we would go to, and we're still, developing more information on that. If you recall, we were at a meeting and, the mayor said that we would go and look at more information and get more information. And, I think that it's going to come in through the city and then go to further appropriations. Michael, can you, I'm getting text from Jordan, if you can just tell her I'm in a meeting. So that would be, another resource that we can have. And it talks about capital planning, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just very, I think that you'll find I have more links for these. Then there's accounting policies and procedures. And these are the things that the Department of Local Services would be expecting, for us, which is also the Department of Revenue falls under those guidelines. So here is the links the most common links that we would be using, and that we use GASB 34 as our guide for our accounting. That's the way we do our accounting area and what we have to follow for rules and regulations. Revenue deficits, an overview on that. Of course, we are not going to have any revenue deficits in any of our revolving accounts because we're going to have, we're going to have to find, we can't charge to it if we don't have the funding. We'd have to find other funding. So this talks about a lot of capital improvement planning guides, financial glossaries, collections and charges and penalties. So each of these are linked if people want to look into it and get more information. And then the school committee budget as a policy statement. And so the budget in the Constitution under the United States and Massachusetts Constitution, only elected public officials may create revenue sources, assess taxes and fees, and approve budgets and prescribe the terms and conditions on which the funds are dispersed. With special designation by act, the elected officials may assign to authorities and commissions the right of levy assessments and assess fees. So, I mean, this is what, everything here. And there's a little link down there that will tell you from MASC, this is their, they had something in 2015, I believe it was, that they talked about, they had a conference for school committees, and this talks about it, don't make it harder. And so this talks about, this gave me a lot of information for, my presentation that I'm bringing and how we go there. Budgetary roles and responsibilities in ed reform. So, role players for administration and policy. So administration is the superintendent, policy is the school committee, and budget is the policy. The budget is a policy instrument. It sets priorities by funding them or not, starting or expanding new programs, cutting or curtailing programs. It supports personnel policies include collective bargaining, equal opportunity and anti-discrimination, employment process. Supports student-related policies and services, transportations and fees, affirms policies and grants, federal programs, any grant awards. And so the one key thing to take out of here is any federal amounts so received by the school committee shall be expended by the school committee without further appropriation, meaning the grant can be considered a line item. So we don't have to go to city council to further appropriate our funds. They come into us and they're ours. Policy and administration, the school committee approves the goals, the strategic plan for the district, provides the resources, the budget to achieve the goals, sets the guidelines and perimeters, policy manual, budget instructions under which the administration will pursue for those goals. It monitors the district progress through data, towards meeting the goals. The superintendent administers the school district within the policy set by the school committee above. Personnel laws. So the personnel laws, the roles of the school committee is hiring and contracting. So hiring and contracting with the superintendent for up to 6 years. Confirming and setting compensation for the associate or assistant superintendents. Confirming and contracting for up to 6 years, the school business officials. Confirm the appointment of the special education administrator, and negotiating collective bargaining agreements with unionized staff, which we will be starting all the AFSCME groups soon for this upcoming year. Their contracts all end, with the exception of custodial, end at the end of this year. So we will be very busy with our negotiation committee. The school committee setting compensation refers to anything of value and is not limited to salary. For example, compensation may include vacation, paid, unpaid leave, sick time, vacation, bereavement, personnel days, fringe benefits, buyout provisions, severance clauses, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all that goes on during the negotiating. So sometimes, the unions are trying to negotiate additional sick days, personal days. That all has to be done in the school committee negotiation meetings. Establishing district policy to impact personnel, contracting, employment range, recruitment, retention, collective bargaining, fringe benefit applications. So as you know, all the unions met with the city and developed a health insurance group that, they all voted for. Right now, we're still in an 80-20 and self-insured with, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield and Harvard. Some communities go on the government one. The school committee executing contracts, the school committee retains the exclusive authority to hire, contract, evaluate, and terminate the superintendent. The school committee confirms and approves contracts for the school business. Official subsequent contracts would require school committee approval. And I believe that the superintendent has done that with the person that's in the negotiating or the school committee president. Contracts of other administrators would be developed by the superintendent based on policy and perimeters set by the school committee. However, the authority can evaluate and terminate a contract remains of the superintendent and all employees except however, the authority to evaluate and terminate any contract remains with the superintendent except for the school business officer. That would have to come from the school committee. And every contract in the district is a public document, but the names of the people entitled to confidentially may be withheld. So them talking about the school committee sets and negotiates pay and employment contracts. So the collective bargaining agreements, the CBAs that we have would be the BTA, Beverly Teachers Union, would be Unit A, the teachers. Unit B would be the administrators, which would be mostly the assistant principals, the nurse leader, athletic, and there's a few others. We've been adding to that. And then the paraprofessionals would be BTA. Under AFSCME, we have the administrative assistants, the food service, transportation, and I did not add the custodial because that one is actually negotiated by the city due to the consolidation. Approvals of non-aligned pay rates, substitutes, and all rates not already cited in a CBA brings to the school committee. So as you recall, I bring forth to you, and I usually try to do 3 years at a time. It would be your crossing guards, it would be your lunchroom monitors, the substitute rates, summer school, anything related like that. And then, of course, there's the wage and hour laws. MGL 149 requires, a lunch period, but does not require breaks. Massachusetts law does not require employers to give rest breaks, hours worked, and field trips, sleeping time, and that is more if it was like, the fire department and stuff. So, but you need to make sure that people have time to rest if they're working more than 24 hours. Most of ours do not fall in that. The district-based procedures. So planning the next fiscal year budget, review the district goals, identify priorities of school committee and stakeholders. Most of the school committee members have heard this many times. It comes up on all the slides. What we do, we collaborate with the principals and administrators to develop a shared framework to guide the decision. So here in Beverly, we don't just have the superintendent say, this is what we're going to do. We meet with the principals and administration and try to figure it all out together. Identify efficiencies and restructuring opportunities, assess enrollments and the impact on staffing. So, currently we're looking at what our enrollments are. If we have so many third grade classes in one school and next year they're going to be going to the fourth grade. Do we have enough fourth grade teachers? Do we need to add? And if we do that, how many was in the second grade? Do we need to reduce the third grade? So that's something that we have to look at all times and try to, make sure we're, living with a class sizes that what we want. Now, during the pandemic, we may have had a little smaller class sizes due to all the issues, and maybe that's going to go back to what we used to use as our targeted class sizes. We review the requests for funding from all departments, and then we finally collaborate with the city administrators to discuss the proposed city contribution in relation to the upcoming school budget. So there's many times. So at that point, we may have some funding requests, and we, hear from the mayor and the director of finance on how much they're going to be receiving. We may be looking at, okay, what do we have in a revolving account that we would use for that purpose? Or we would go and say, we need more money because we want such and such. And that's how we would, try to speak about what we want for our budget.
All right, before I go to the next slide, I'm just going to say that in our last school committee meeting on January 11th, if anybody is interested, we've started this year's budget process, and Dr. Trocheck indeed spoke to I think all the items on this slide. And so you can see she put a slide up in that presentation recorded by the wonderful BevCam with the priorities that we're looking at and that we're considering for our budget for the next school year.
Mm-hmm. And there probably will be more priorities that come up after we meet with department heads and, so right now we have just the priorities of what the school committee was looking for, the administration that she knew, and, there may be more. I stole this slide right from Dr. Shirocheck's thing. So this is Beverly district goal areas for FY23 and beyond. And this has not changed. We're creating conditions of equity, rigorous and consistent curriculum, innovative practices, and operations and management practices. And when we look at that practices, what is working, what needs to, and where do we need to look at? So one of the issues we're going to have, in this current year is, talking about utilities and, what we need to, fund for that. I just thought that when we were talking about budget offsets, it'd be best for me to explain this. I know this was brought up at school committee before, but I was trying to create this document that would be a useful tool for so many. So these are the revolving funds that are held separately, have their own revenue source, and we have expenses that are charged directly to that. So if we didn't have the revolving funds, then our budget would be much larger. So we have the circuit breaker revolving, and that's used for special education tuitions. We have the special education revolving, and that's used for personnel. We use that for tuition in students. School choice revolving, we use that for teacher salaries. Currently, I've been just targeting the high school salaries just for ease of where I throw it on the end of year report. Preschool revolving, it's used for teachers in the preschool and preschool expenses only. Athletic revolving, we would get that money in from fees and for gate receipts, and that's used for coaches' salaries. And if there was any funding more available, it would be used for equipment or whatever the athletic director would deem athletic revolving. Transportation revolving is used for driver salaries and transportation expenses. And again, those funds are coming in from user fees. Building rental revolving, AKA use of building, is used for custodial salaries and facility expenses. In the past, I used to use that for the utilities. We used to have part of it was an offset. But before we used to rent out the McEwen School, and we used to bring in so much more. So now it's pretty much used just for custodial salaries. And the non-resident tuition revolving is the SEVIS funding used for the students that come to Beverly High School. So therefore we use it just for teacher salaries at the high school. Generally, it's when any teacher is being paid to teach an additional class during their prep time, they get a stipend that's in the collective bargaining agreement. And I've been using the SEVIS funding for that as an offset. Managing the current year budget. So the final approved school budget is uploaded into the Munis accounting system. The department heads and the school administration will encumber expenses that are planned for the current fiscal year. All purchases need to be encumbered prior to purchasing the goods and services to be compliant with the Chapter 30B that we talked about earlier. If there needs to be a transfer of funds, the administrator completes a transfer request and submits it to the Director of Finance. So in that case, those happen. So this month I did not have any transfers to come forward. It didn't mean that I didn't do any transfers. It just means I didn't have to bring them to you. So one thing I could add to this slide that is that if it was crossing cost centers, then it would have to come to school committee approval. So right now I did do many transfers, but it was within each cost center. Each month, the administrators are provided with a year-to-date budget expenditure report, which is what I produce to the school committee finance and facilities each month. And that shows you the budget, the revised budget, where the transfers happened or encumbrances rolled over from the previous year, year-to-date expenditures, encumbrances, the available balances, and the percentage of budget used. So it has a lot of different categories that it would be used, and it might be you're looking at it to see what is still encumbered. And you might be looking at it, or the administrators might be looking at it as far as what's available balance. And then the percentage of budget used might be looked at more like if you're looking at the utilities, or if you're looking at substitutes, where are you? And what that percentage of budget used is talking about what's expended and what is encumbered based on the revised budget. And each month, I take a lot of pride in this. Each month, the Director of Finance and Operation meets with the Administrator of Special Education and PPS to review the out-of-district tuition obligations, which we actually have a meeting tomorrow. It's a funny fact on this is that our previous SPED director called me up when she went to a different district, and she goes, "The business manager won't meet with me." And I'm like, well, I'm going to meet with you, because in our district, I'm going to meet with the SPED director, because that is so volatile that I would not want to be the one sitting there saying, oh, I didn't know about these expenditures. So that's one thing I take a lot of pride in that we do. A lot of times they're talking about hypothetical, like the student, we're reviewing this program, that program, but I'd rather hear it 100 times than to not hear it and then on June 30th say, oh, wait a minute, we don't have money. So, and what I do in those meetings is we talk about the encumbrances. So there's a lot of students that will go from one placement to another placement, and we actually will, decrease the encumbrance where we thought they were going and increase it to where they're now going. So we always have an accurate count. And that's why I think those budget meetings are very important. Excuse me. Processing and timelines. So the encumbrances are done on a daily basis, entered into Munis. The purchases that are over 5,000 are or more are reviewed and signed by the Director of Finance. If they're special ed related, Bethany signs them, and then the superintendent initials them. And then all of that then goes to the mayor. So anything over 5,000 has a lot of checks that we have to check off. The vendor accounts payables are completed weekly and sent to the city auditors. The invoices are reviewed and signed by the Director of Finance and Operations, and they've already been signed by the Food Service Director, Transportation Director, the other directors before they even get to me. And then here in Beverly, we've chosen the option to have 3 school committee members review the warrants weekly and sign via DocuSign. And then when the mayor signs it and his position, that becomes the majority. You do have the option of having just one school committee member, but it can only be one school committee member at all times. So it's not like I could have one this week and somebody else next. Payrolls are processed weekly. The AFSCME union personnel, BTA Unit B only, and non-personnel are processed each Friday. And then payrolls for the BTA Unit A and C are processed bi-weekly and processed on Thursdays. The transportation and food service bookkeepers process their payrolls on their department, and then all the others are processed at central office. City and school collaboration. I look like I'm almost running out of time here. So, this here slide kind of came from what generally for municipal school districts, the city or town generally carries expenses related to schools, talking about health insurance, active and retirees, maintenance, repairs, sidewalk, roads, snow plowing, insurances. And then I put an asterisk down at the bottom, but the Beverly Public Schools, we cover the cost of the active health insurance, snow plowing in the school parking lots, unemployment and workers' compensation. In general, the repair and maintenance are covered by the school budget, and that the buildings and grounds is consolidated with the Department of Public Services. However, if we were going to be building a new building, it falls onto the city side, and then until the building is, handed over to us. So that's kind of a little different. Finance terminology, just learning different things. Appropriate budget means the budget. FY is the fiscal year. We use a modified accrual basis of accounting. That means that we count everything that's encumbered as spent. Warrants are how we process payroll and vendor accounts payable. End of year is EOI. Free cash is the city certifies their free cash. We're a fund accounting. JE is a journal entry, budget transfers, allocation and reallocating. And the school budget. So here's another thing talking about terms and acronyms. A lot of times I'll say FTE, that means full-time equivalency. Mainly we talk about 35 hours. If we're talking about custodial, it's based on 40 hours. A collective bargaining agreement talks about columns and lanes, steps, cost of living, and then non-aligned pay rates would be considered non-union, and then additional compensation. Under expense, that's encumbrance is ENC. Our accounting is an org and an object. An org would be your AY, object would be teacher salaries. Contracted services, and then requisitions, purchase orders, and blanket purchase orders.
I don't have any more slides, Jean.
Oh, okay. So then if we can jump back into our finance and facility one. Nope. Yep. So if we scroll past all of these, keep going. It's going to be quite a few. You're going to come to one, there's a little guy that says, whoa, that was a lot of information. There. So, well, that was a lot to cover. And Sue found this little guy here for me with all this information overload. So this document is a good reference. However, if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me and we can, learn some of it together, or, it might be something that I've already have in-depth knowledge for.
And everybody should have access to that, right, Jean? It's
Yes, yep. So I did
a live document.
Yeah, so I did put it in as a link on the last email I sent out to people, and so that you can go there. And then what I plan
Google Doc.
Yep. So I think if you go to the emails I sent to you, it was in the last email.
Okay.
It says school budgeting, and it just pulls. What I didn't want to do is have everybody have the McEwen, cafeteria and Dana's information. I just pulled everything that was that budgeting 101. And my goal is that if I find new information, I can update it and then tell people.
Fantastic.
So I think the last two things that we have on our the last thing that I was, if anybody has any questions on the revenue and expense.
All right, I'm pulling the revenue report up for everybody to look at quickly. I think that I would say to you, Jean, are there, the normal questions we tend to ask here is, are you concerned? Are any of these revenues, quote unquote, not on track for what you expect or what we expect to be able to then meet our budget obligations?
Yep, I am not worried about any of the revenue sources.
All right, I'm looking for hands. Does anybody have any questions about the revenue sources? I appreciate the fact that we normally, we've gotten a little spoiled. We normally only go an hour, and we knew we had a little bit of extra time today, and Jean had all this wonderful information. So we're going over, and I'll go to the expenditures report next, and I'll ask Jean that same question, and then I'll look for hands if anybody has any explicit questions on the expenditure report. So, Jean, are there any areas where you think you're burning at a rate higher than where we should be relative to the school year?
Not at the time. I do not see anything that I'm going to be looking deep into different things. So that we have the ESSER funding, so grant funding. So I'm actually looking at that to make sure that we're on target with that. And then I would be looking to see in the appropriated. One of the school committee members did ask me about utilities, concerned about the increase of utilities, not to mention any names of who that was. But what I did run a year-to-date. So this report's called a year-to-date report. And then I am able to run a report that's called a historical totals. So I was actually able to grab all of the utility accounts and just be looking at those instead of looking at a 34-page report and trying to pull them out. And right now, we're pretty much in target as how we were last year. However, what I don't know is last year, did I pay utility bills on the last week, last year, and that's not captured yet. And I did notice that the utility costs were going up this month, but also in looking at the bills, our therms went up. So if we've had a more of a milder winter, that we didn't use as many therms, but we do, we'll be looking at that. I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive on that, and then I'll bring that to the February meeting to see, and maybe that time we'll get that. Right now we're getting the December bills, which is really, early December, and we're just getting them now in January. So I'll look at that, but nothing really alarmed me. I looked at this substitute lines. I'm okay with those right now. The tuitions, we meet each month on those. I'm okay with that. There are some accounts that may have negatives that I need to fix. And what it is my timing. I need to look at these like the week before this meeting, because then I'm having the payroll person, correct some accounting where we have somebody charged to the wrong account, or they were supposed to be charged to a grant and they're not. So we're fine tuning that.
Okay, so now I'm looking to my committee members to see if anybody has, raise a hand or unmute and say if you have any questions for Ms. Sherburne about the expenses report. I'm seeing only negative nodding heads. Okay, so I think at this point in time, we've concluded. We've gotten through every part of our agenda. Jean, I love the new Finance and Facilities 101. Thank you for all that wonderful information. And I'm very much looking forward to the year-over-year report specific to, not that I want to throw myself under the bus here, but we know as individual bill payers that the utility costs are going through the roof. So I'm very concerned about them relative. And I'm not the only person who has asked that question. So looking forward to that next month to kind of see the year over year. What are we using and what's the rate? And then, as we diverge, then what's our plan for bridging that gap? because we certainly didn't budget for a, several 100% increase in the, for instance, cost of electricity. So
Right.
on that note, lovely note, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. And let's try to go in the same order. Ms. Coelho. All right, she is on mute. All right, we're gonna bypass her. Dr. McKenzie,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Ms. DeGeneva,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho, second call. There you go.
Yes,
Thank you. And
technical
myself,
issues.
I know, it's hard. We're a little out of shape, right? Being all remote. Myself, yes, so that passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention this evening. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Are we staying on for the next meeting? Those of us who
Yes.
have the next one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the policy subcommittee and committee of the whole will just stay on this Zoom. We thank BevCam for broadcasting us on 99 and streaming us on YouTube. The
But we gotta-
subcommittee won't be broadcast.
Okay, we have a little break though, right? A couple minutes?
Yep.
Okay,
5-minute
thank
break.
you.
Yep.
Recording stopped.